Raising your GPA. I often get a lot of questions from parents on how their students can bring up their grades in their classes. Here is literally the ultimate step-by-step guide that any student can follow to bring up their grades and get an A in any class. We've given the exact same advice and step-by-step plan for hundreds of students, and our students have 1. Gone from being a student that got A's and B's to getting straight A's the following semester. 2. Use these strategies to get A's in the hardest AP classes, such as biology, chemistry, physics 1 and 2, mechanics, U.S. history, calculus BC, etc., at the most rigorous and competitive high schools. And 3. Brought their grades up from a C+ to an A- with less than half the semester left. This advice is helpful for every single student. It doesn't matter if you have straight B's or if you have all A's in all your honors or AP classes. Regardless of how well you're doing or not, these habits and best practices will ultimately prepare you for more intensive or rigorous classes later in high school and in college. 1. Review your mistakes and the questions that you missed on previous tests. Just because your teacher does not give back the tests is not an excuse to not know exactly where your mistakes are. All of you have tutorial when you can go to your teacher's classrooms to look at your tests or quizzes so that you can pinpoint your mistakes or weaknesses and work on them, either with your tutor or your teacher. Ask yourself a simple question. How can you improve and fix your mistakes or weak areas if you don't know what or where they are to begin with? The definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again, but expect different results. The same thing is true here. Can you really make the same mistakes on the test but expect to get a better grade? Of course not. Once you understand how to solve the missed problems, you should ask your teacher or tutor about them, or find practice problems that are of similar difficulty so that you can get more practice to better prepare for future tests. Remember, everything that you learn builds upon a previous section, so if your foundation is weak in one area, it's going to cause problems later on as well. 2. Find practice problems that are of similar difficulty to the quiz or test questions you see on your test. There are a number of ways to do this. Ask your teacher if there are additional resources, practice problems, study guides, etc. that mimic the difficulty of questions that you're seeing on your tests that you're getting wrong. Copy down the hard questions you've missed on the test and show them to your tutor. If your tutor is a competent one and has been tutoring students in these subjects, they should have a plethora of resources, whether it's workbooks or prep books or online repositories or websites where they can pull questions from. Spend some time Googling. All the classes that you're taking are not new and have been around for a very long time, so there's a tremendous amount of resources available for every single subject. If you have an AP Human Geo test on a certain chapter, you should be Googling AP Human Geo multiple choice test questions for that chapter and scour the different web pages to find past chapter tests that most closely resemble the difficulty of your tests. Remember, given that you live around some pretty competitive school districts, the standard, rigor, and expectations that you are held to is much higher than the majority of the U.S., which is why you can't just look at prep books, for example, Barron's, Princeton Review, etc. Because 1, they only cover the topics from a high-level standpoint, so there are not enough in-depth questions, and 2, the AP exam is a standardized nationwide test, not a test specifically designed for students that go to highly competitive schools. Look at your textbooks. A lot of textbooks will have harder, more challenging problems. However, sometimes your teacher won't assign them as homework. Long story short, there should be absolutely no reason except in extreme circumstances where you aren't able to find practice problems or questions that will help you better prepare for your tests or quizzes. 3. Treat your homework, study guides, and mock tests that you've created like actual tests. This means that you actually do all the questions or problems from scratch, without notes, the book, or any other study or preparation material. You also need time to yourself as well. There's a difference between doing an entire practice test in 1 hour, which is close to your actual test time, versus doing it in 2 hours. You have to remember how to get your brain to think quickly, recall information quickly, and be able to translate that information into an organized manner for your test. Just because you're able to do all the study questions at home doesn't mean you can do it efficiently within the time allotted on the tests. 4. Create mock quizzes and tests. I would highly recommend you create mock quizzes or tests that should be similar to your actual tests in terms of number of questions, time allotted, and difficulty of questions so that you can continuously drill yourself to process information faster and answer all the questions while limiting your mistakes, as I know a lot of you can work on your attention to detail. Careless mistakes are not acceptable, not on these tests, and definitely not in life. Feel free to ask your parents. Anyone that makes careless mistakes can't be trusted in jobs or internships, and they won't make it very far in their careers until they're able to produce consistent high-quality work day in and day out. As mentioned previously, there's a ton of resources to draw from to get these questions from. 5. Check your answers against the actual solutions guide. It amazes me how many students actually forget about this, more so in math than anywhere else. Just because you arrive at the correct answer doesn't mean it's the most efficient way to solve that problem. There's a difference between taking 5 minutes to solve a problem versus 20 minutes to solve a problem. And as you know, every minute counts, especially when you're taking a test. I'm Alex, thanking you for listening to this educational video produced by Corolla Schultz.